what's up, parish orphans and retrogrades around the world? Timothy Gordon here with another podcast from beautiful Mississippi, United States of America. Today, I'm back with some church news, in particular, 3 important stories. The first one is Bishop Barron of my old neck of the woods, Southern California, wants to get together and did get together a group of Catholic media personnel, mainstream Catholic media personnel, to discuss what is to be done about these pesky traditionalists. And when he casts this net, he uses this term traditionalist. He uses it in a wide way that includes Church Militant, it includes LifeSite News, it includes presumptively Taylor Marshall, myself, other podcasters of all the varying sorts of traditionalism. That's story number 1. We're going to talk about that in just a short while. Secondly, going a little bit further into the week, the Vatican was hacked by China, by a hack unit in China, just before talks commemorating the 2-year anniversary of Chinese-Vatican relation thawing. And that, of course, is bound up in the McCarrick work that Cardinal McCarrick, back when he was a cardinal, did as a diplomat. Has to do with the state church in China, the underground church. We're going to talk about that for a little bit. And finally, the third story is this new meeting between Pope Francis and 96-year-old atheist Italian journalist Eugenio Scalfari, the co-founder of La Repubblica, a text, a printed like zine they hand out on the Metro La Linea A and B. They would try to hand me this smut rag, news smut rag, fake news smut rag on the train when I wrote it in Italy. And I told them, this is Marxist nonsense. You couldn't give this to me even though it's free. So there's another meeting between them, this time between Pope Francis and Eugenio Scalfari, not the shocker news as reported by Scalfari, but it is like the 9th or 10th total interview that Pope Francis has done with Scalfari, this pontificate, and most of the previous meetings occasioned shock news, like there is no hell, or other fare like that. Pope Francis said incredible stuff to Scalfari, sometimes even ostensibly attacking the Trinity, and yet he continued to meet with this guy. The very latest happened earlier, late last week on Friday. So this is reported by America Magazine. I'm gonna talk about that. First, I want to get to Bishop Barron hosts an invite-only meeting to discuss rad trads and their online vitriol. Now, before I read from this National Catholic Register online article, I want to point out what he's calling a rad trad is something of a term of art if used correctly. It means usually a certain branch of traditionalists within the church, SSPX in the far right, that rejects Vatican II or, has a particular equipoise with regard to the popes after 1958 or some even fringier position than that. Clearly, Bishop Barron, when he calls his meeting, I'm going to read to you from the NCR article real quick. He's including the likes of Michael Voris in Church Militant, which is a defender of at least the documents of Vatican II, not the spirit of it, and not the connection between the spirit and the documents. Ostensibly, he means someone like me, who is in the same boat as Voris, right? We've had intra traditionalist dialogue over the last 6 months about what the meaning of Vatican II is, what the meaning of the debates after Vatican II portend for the future in the church. Certain figures from Vatican II, Ottaviani, Lefebvre, all of these guys have been debated vigorously by traditionalists. And so he's painting us all with one broad brush. Listen to the NCR article. Los Angeles Auxiliary Bishop Robert Barron hosted an invite-only meeting of Catholic media professionals last week to discuss, quote, disturbing trends in the online Catholic world, end quote, including the rise of radical traditionalist movements that are often marked by personal attacks and vitriolic commentary. the personal attacks go round and round, right? In Catholic center, Catholic left, and Catholic right. I'm not a fan of them. Few are, because often I find myself in the crosshairs of them, and I don't participate in them, generally speaking, aside from a slip of the tongue here and there. But Bishop Barron has had occasion many times from myself, privately, publicly, to do dialogue. I did a personal plea to spiritual father Barron after I was fired, saying, hey, I took your advice, please reach out to me, even privately, because you issued a statement saying that Catholics like myself, who are laymen, should be the ones taking the reins with regard to Black Lives Matter. I did so. I never heard from you. I had, earlier in the year, I'd reached out and said, hey, Bishop Barron, can we talk privately? Heard that the answer was no. Have reached out on a number of times, and I've been really quite ginger in my approach, in my mien, in my language to Bishop Barron. Even while I critique him, I think he gets some things right. Who's to say how much? And I do think he's a smart man. I just think he needs to reconfigure his approach to traditionalists. I think he needs to do live debate. Let iron sharpen iron. If someone is 90% right debating someone who's right about 10% of the issues, then iron sharpens iron. The 90% that person A has right will be shown. The 10% that person B has right will come out in the wash, so to speak. And that's why debate is good. Why not mix it up and have a friendly debate the way I've been doing with my friends? Steve Skojek, a friend from 1 Peter 5 over COVID. My friends Chris Plants and Richard DeClue over Vatican II. Friends, like personal friends. All of these three names. And why not do something approaching that? Instead, he wants to call the mainstream Catholic news outlets behind the scenes, issue some sort of like online imprimatur that will discredit the alternate news sources, the equivalents of Breitbart, or what used to be the Drudge Report, in the Catholic world, and force the outlets that people lost faith for reportage, for unfaithful reportage, and force them back to these by saying the only true Catholic imprimatur rests with these outfits. Don't listen to these other ones like Church Militant or LifeSite News, which is absurd. Listen to what he says here. It turns out the private meeting took place on July the 29th, which is over a week ago, but the story wasn't known until a couple days after that. Happened through Zoom, was confirmed to NCR by Brandon Vaught, content director for Word on Fire, who seems to be a nice man. I've talked to him on several occasions. He, published some of my things on Strange Notions. Seems to be a good man. Now, and I've also reached out to him for dialogue. He's the main person I interfaced with. And came back with bupkis and wondered why. Vaught said that the meeting was initiated at his suggestion, it was his idea, and had a threefold purpose: to discuss a culture of contempt among Catholics online, okay, B, the rise of tabloid-style news in the Catholic press, often in service of accruing web traffic and video views. News sells. Real news sells. Now, the fact that it might be salacious in its content is not the fault of the reporter. C, the influence of the so-called radical traditionalist or rad-trad movements online. They're misusing the terms here, right? Rad-trad has never, ever meant the people like Michael Voris or LifeSite News, right? Rad-trad traditionally refers to, no one knows precisely, but people to the right, theologically, of Michael Voris. Sedevacantists are sometimes considered rad-trad, or at least Society of St. Pius X. Not Michael Voris, right? Michael Voris and myself and Patrick Coffin got into an intra-traditional debate around Easter about the merits of all these things with those who would more closely be associated with the rad-trad movement. And guess what? Even Voris is, and presumably myself, are being painted with a rad-trad moniker here. Rad-trads are often young Catholics who prefer traditional liturgy, including the Latin Mass, and subscribe to more conservative political beliefs and religious practices. I guess if this is the abiding definition, yes, under this rubric, I would be a rad-trad. But the problem is, so would almost all of the youth in 2020 who have kept the faith, right? Everyone loves the Latin Mass now. Sorry, it's back. And all of them who love the Latin Mass, I'd say to 99.9%, aside from some embrace of socialist policies in terms of political economy, the so-called Tradinistas, everyone is at least socially right-wing who attends the traditional Latin Mass. Get out of town. All these are major pastoral issues, Brandon Vaught says, which is why I proposed to Bishop Barron, in his capacity as bishop, to host a meeting with various Catholic media leaders to discuss these items. Brandon, Mr. Vaught, whatever's more respectful to say. It sounds stilted to say Mr. Vaught when we've spoken before. Brandon, I'm being serious here. Like, I'm a nice guy. Why don't you and I, or myself, you and the good bishop, why don't we address the substantive issues at play during and after Vatican II? Why don't we discuss that, right? No vitriol, no ad hominems. I thought Bishop Barron's video describing the 3 parties at Vatican II, not just 2, was very honest and shed a lot of light on things. Now, he identified himself as a centrist, which was very honest. And he said there's almost no one in the right-wing contingent at Vatican II, which is fine. Now, that's where I'd be. But I found that his honesty in that video meant I could probably do real dialogue, the style that I did with Chris Plants and Richard Decloux in the last video, with Bishop Barron, and say, okay, let's talk about the weaponized ambiguity. Even though the documents are valid. Let's talk about what I call codified heteropraxy in my upcoming book. The fact that technically the documents were worded to be not doctrinally problematic, but there's weaponized ambiguity in certain soft spots, which, as Skilevix said during the council, we know what we're doing, and after the council, we know what we will do with those soft spots. That's not a direct quote. I've disagreed with traditionalists, that many of whom say that the documents themselves, the sacred constitutions, need to be thrown out. I think we need a Vatican III. I think we need to, through the means of the church, through another council, change the disciplines back to what they were. But that's not the same thing as throwing out. We just need another council to sort out the confusion, probably go back to the old Mass universally. But that's not the same thing as throwing it out. It's just, you can change it. If it's a discipline, you can change it back. So I'm not such an extremist there. I just know objectively the Latin Mass is better. But the point is, why not debate these things the way I did with Chris Plants and Richard Decloux? And what they were trying to do that with Taylor Marshall, who's, I was ex-co-host of his show. He and I were close together in our view of Vatican II at one time. Taylor was on a trajectory. I'm about where I was. I'm somewhere now, given Taylor's trajectory, somewhere because he moved somewhere between Taylor and, say, Chris Plants, Richard Decloux, as per my last video. But we could do dialogue, and Bishop Barron would be, theologically speaking, a bit to the left of Plants and Decloux. So we can have kind of 4 positions along a spectrum and have really great dialogue. All parties quite intelligent, quite well educated, and quite, from an analytical philosophy perspective, quite credentialed to have such a debate. Instead, Bishop Barron has this meeting, as suggested by you, Brandon, to talk with third parties who are known hostiles to myself, Marshall, the Retrogrades, LifeSite News, Church Militant, about these people, as if we're going to grant an episcopal imprimatur to certain online outfits and deny it to others, rendering the real news fake news and the fake news real news. That's bad news, and it's a horrible look. It's just abysmal optics. Why not just dialogue some? I don't understand why not. I've never been disrespectful in my treatments of you. I'm speaking for myself now here. I've never said any less than all I seek is legitimate dialogue, encounter. I might use the term in a sort of tongue-in-cheek way because it's such a popular term. in the Francis Vatican, but I mean it literally. Even if I'm smiling as I say it, let's do dialogue face to face. If you can jump on a Zoom meeting with Crux or these other kind of center left Catholic outfits, why can't you jump on a Zoom meeting with these obviously right-wing Catholic outfits? Bishop Barron pitches himself as center-right, by the way. So ostensibly he's closer to me, if you take him at his word. He's closer to my position than he is to Crux, if you take him at his word. Like that's a fact. He says he's center-right theologically. So if these are major pastoral issues, Brandon, then let's talk about them face to face. Why do I keep getting denied? Barron is the founder of Word on Fire, auxiliary bishop in Los Angeles. In recent weeks, he has used his sizable social media presence to call the, quote, armies of commenters fueled by internet provocateurs. There he's probably referring to Taylor Marshall. I think he actually designated him that not that long ago, who have attacked him on Twitter following an article he published regarding the respective roles of the bishop and the laity. Now, I didn't attack him. I sent him a very widely viewed, like 65,000 views to date, kind of spoken Philippic, like, Bishop Barron, I took your advice. Can you help me out? I got fired for speaking out about anti-Christian Marxist outfit, terrorist outfit, Black Lives Matter. I got fired. I moved from California to Mississippi because of it. Would you say, in the first stages of this thing, I was like, would you say something to my bishop? I know you know Bishop Brennan. That's not attacking him. Now, I did call out ostensible discontinuities between the worldview of lay ownership of these issues and firing laity for speaking out on these issues, but except I was legitimately and honestly asking for a dialogue. Again, which is this is something that we're supposed to embrace in the Francis pontificate and in the church writ large. May I, as a spiritual father, issue a kind of pastoral cry of the heart to my fellow Catholics who practice this sort of thing, he asked in a video posted July 7th. Cut it out, he pleads. Barron dubbed the attacks mean-spirited and unjust. Sometimes they are. That's not right. I mean, I've been on the other end of this. Sometimes they are, man. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, everyone gets attacked a little bit. That's what it is to have a public face and a public name. Yeah, but I don't like it, and the mean-spirited stuff should be dispensed with. Nevertheless, the best way to cut out the echo chamber, which is often mobbish and unkind and a bit cruel, is to just do dialogue with the person you're disagreeing with face to face. And I thought this is what we were supposed to be doing. I mean, it really is what we're supposed to be doing. In another video he posted on July 22nd, he criticized certain traditionalists who have rejected the Second Vatican Council. Now, this one is not me, because I have never, ever rejected the Second Vatican Council. I've been critical of it. I'm writing a book on it right now. But I do actually affirm the hermeneutic of continuity, even if I saw malicious designs with a muscular contingent of the prelates at Vatican II. For me, it's impossible, he says, to repudiate Vatican II and claim to be a traditionalist. Now, many people consider me a traditionalist, even though I don't repudiate Vatican II, and many traditionalists don't repudiate Vatican II. No one really knows what the credentials of traditionalism are. So that's a fair enough claim. Vaught says the meeting of Catholic media professionals discussed the online behavior of traditionalists who, quote, ruthlessly criticize the Pope and bishops. Okay, they're talking about Boris there. That has nothing to do with traditionalism. That has to do with malfeasance, misbehavior on the part of the Pope and the bishops. I will not say one word, Pope Francis said after the McCarrick debacle. We have to criticize. We have to criticize relentlessly, if not ruthlessly. And the same personages, and myself included, question the authority of the Second Vatican Council. No, that's inaccurate. Many of the same people actually don't. Boris doesn't. I don't. Patrick Coffin don't question the legitimacy of Vatican II, even though we notice there are suspicious elements in it that probably require a Vatican III. We are not with the other traditionalists that say just throw it out. And many traditionalists are not. So you have to parse, Your Excellency. And these are simply the different traditionalists from those that criticize the Pope and bishops for malfeasance. Well, those that criticize the Pope and other bishops are frankly like everyone, right? Who's actually reading the real news and not just doing fake news. So you have to be more specific. Again, he in an interview with National Catholic Register earlier this year, early spring, late winter, early spring, he suggested that bishops may want to consider introducing, here's what I was genuinely balking at, something like a mandatum for those who claim to teach the Catholic faith online, whereby a bishop affirms that the person is teaching within the full communion of the church. Okay, this is problematic. This is deeply problematic because it's attempting to rescue fake news, which was burying the Catholic leads, getting rid of the Vigano stories in late 2018, early 2019, and getting rid of the Pope Francis malfeasance stories, and reporting on the gay prostitution and cocaine parties being held at the Holy Office, at the CDF, the office where Coco Palmarillo, the cardinal, was found and let go by the police, and that was in 2017. Things like this, these are not, that doesn't make one a rad trad or any sort of trad. It just makes one a concerned individual for caring about this sort of news. And the problem here is that Bishop Barron is slandering or something like slandering everyone who has these concerns. And I harbor these concerns. I harbor them dearly and have for 2018, since many of you came to know me who didn't know me from my book before that on Taylor Marshall's channel, TNT. But I think this is enough. Let's suffice to say a mandatum would be bad because it would be like a mark of the beast, whereby the people like LifeSite or Church Militant who are interested in reporting on such stories and have near impeccable theological status in terms of their track record, leave the questions of Vatican II and some of the more nuanced post-Vatican II issues, Archbishop Lefebvre aside. LifeSite News, Church Militant have impeccable theological status. On the other hand, America Magazine was publishing, I think, something early this year, late last year, on Catholic communism, and America Magazine is one of the chosen favorites of Bishop Barron. These were one of the ones that would allegedly pass muster, even though he doesn't endorse that. So we must avoid a mandatum. It would be bad news. It's a horrible boomerish look. And I am not just saying it. What we need to do is real dialogue. I would love to sit down with Bishop Barron and say, look, here's what I mean by codified heteropraxy in Vatican II. Here's what I mean about it's a valid council, and I don't deny that it is. I never have. But we need to discuss the ways that Sacrosanctum Concilium, for example, had soft spots. The document's technically sound, but why are 99 out of every 100 masses in America not done in conformity with the ostensible faithfulness, if you call it that, of Sacrosanctum Concilium? Someone answer that for me. Maybe Bishop Barron could. He knows this stuff really well. Maybe there's something we're all missing. That's why you do real dialogue. So have your eyes on that. When he made reference to this mandatum, we kind of all let it slide. I think it was pre-Easter. It might have been right after Easter, but I think it was earlier in the year than that. And I kind of just thought it would fall by the wayside. He's bringing it back up now. He met with certain of these center-left Catholic news agencies. Catholic News Agency is one of them. And I think America Magazine was invited. National Catholic Register, from what I've heard, was not invited. Neither was obviously LifeSite or Church Militant or any of the individual commentators that he's probably talking about. So what of dialogue? with the interrogated parties. Why not interrogate them? Okay, so let me skip over the Vatican's being hacked by China, and I'll put that at the end. I would like to talk about this Scalfari interview with Pope Francis. Now, they talked about the climate and the church in the modern world, which seems to be a favorite topic for their discussions. There wasn't the grabby, questioning of the Trinity or questioning of the existence of hell, which we've grown strangely accustomed to when Scalfari interviews Pope Francis. But we did have some similar themes resound. On CatholicCulture.org, it reads the following way. Eugenio Scalfari of La Repubblica has published another article based on a personal interview with Pope Francis. The friendly conversation centering on environmental concerns did not include any shocking statements attributed to the pontiff. After past interviews, Scalfari, who is 96 and relies solely on his memory to reconstruct quotations, had claimed that Pope Francis denied the existence of hell and said that Jesus is not an incarnate God. And he's granted this, the 9th or 10th interview of the pontificate. I had a running count as of early spring this year, and then I lost count. As the note above supplements, correct details in the original source can be found from America Magazine. The headline in America Magazine is Pope Francis discusses climate crisis with well-known Italian journalists. I don't need to say it, but I will. Why talk to someone who you consider a personal friend if they're an untrustworthy personal friend, if they've misreported you time and again, which Pope Francis' defenders have obviously covered the ribs of Francis by saying this is misreportage. Okay, don't go back to him. He won't talk to LifeSite News or Church Militant, the right-wing ecumenism of hatred, or whatever he called the right-wing Catholic reporters in 2017. But he does keep talking to Scalfari. And you hear his name said Scalfari and Scalfari. So it makes me unsure. He discussed the grave ecological crisis, according to America, facing humanity with the well-known Italian journalist Eugenio Scalfari. The 96-year-old, an atheist, broke the news in an article on La Repubblica just on August 2nd. So all this was happening late July, early August. Lots of news this week. Under the headline, Pope Francis in the Modern Society. This is not a shocking headline. We expect Pope Francis to be very concerned with the modern society. He seems to be the culmination of the spirit of Vatican II, to use a catchphrase. In it, he recalled that they have met many times over the years since Francis was elected Pope on March 13, 2013, and have exchanged correspondence over the years since then. He says this: "We are truly friends. We could not but embrace physically and mentally." That's fine. I'm not a COVID-19 fearer, so an embrace physically is fine as between friends. But what does this mean mentally? Scalfari is always alleging, unrebuffed by Francis, that they have a meeting of the minds, that they are on the same intellectual wavelength. And it's unrebuffed, uncorrected. What does that mean? He's a 96-year-old Marxist-leaning atheist who runs a Marxist-leaning, strongly atheist newspaper. I used to know in Rome, before I knew who Eugenio Scalfari was, the founder editor, I knew it was bad just by the ridiculous front page headlines. This time, Scalfari says, the two spoke first about modern society, which began with the period of the Enlightenment, which the way America is reporting it sounds like it was affirmed as a good thing, and how the Church has come to terms with the changes in society, as the Second Vatican Council made clear. He said Francis told him that the Church has not yet fully implemented that council and saw his own task as continuing that work. Now, does this count as being a provocateur? Because that he's provoking here by saying he mentions the Enlightenment, which is a dirty word among not just Catholic traditionalists, but any faithful Catholics. He mentions the Second Vatican Council, which is a tortured concept or a corpus of concepts, widely bandied even among traditionalists, as between and among us, but especially with the centrists and the leftists in the church. It's a somewhat tortured concept. And then he says that Francis told him that the church has not yet fully implemented that council, meaning what he means here is the spirit of the council, meaning Francis views his task as going and bringing the church further to the left, dragging it along with him. That's being a provocateur. In actual fact, the only reports of Mr. Scalfari's usually long conversations with Francis have come from the elderly Italian journalist himself, who does not record or take any notes during the private face-to-face meetings, and in the past, his write-ups from memory have often given rise to controversy, and their redaction or retraction by the Vatican has always played upon weaponized ambiguity and used that ambiguity to affirm less than actually to redact. What I mean is they always leave the meat of the provocative story intact, the redactions. If you go through all those very, very controversial Scalfari interviews with Francis, the Vatican will say something. It's never much, there's always ambiguous whether or not the meat of the story is left on the table. The Vatican has sought to avoid commenting on these private conversations, except when it has had to correct some of Mr. Scalfari's alleged quotes from Francis that have raised serious theological questions, such as one that suggested the Pope denied the existence of hell. He never denied that he denied it. Go back and look at that interview, do your own research. I think that was 2017. Scalfari later admitted that some words attributed to the pontiff were not shared by Pope Francis himself, but he said, I was characterizing, the Vatican also said, yeah, he was characterizing what Pope Francis said. It's not a redaction. They're just saying he was paraphrasing, not directly quoting. That's very fishy. This time, however, there's nothing particularly controversial in his report about what the Pope said, as the main part of the article reflects more or less faithfully what Francis wrote in 2015 in his encyclical Laudato Si, which he's returning to in the wake of the Amazonian Synod and the ecological crisis, including climate change that is threatening the future of humanity, and the fact that so many people are living in poverty across the globe. So really, they're going. They talked about the aging of the sun. I know that's no pun intended. That's burning a hole in your mind. This is one of the top issues. Not the U.S. election, not relativism, not the Vatican being hacked by its new favorite daughter, China, not the tyranny of relativism, not terrorist organizations which have infiltrated the United States and are setting our cities on fire, but literally the aging of the sun. This is ivory tower stuff. Men of the left ivory tower stuff, if ever there was. The bar none, par excellence. They're talking about this as the world burns and the church is continually corrupted. He reported that he and the Pope agreed that there cannot be a genuine and lasting solution to the challenge of the ecological crisis and climate change unless it is a joint and collective response and a shared responsibility. I would call you all to Agenda 2030, which Pope Francis has endorsed, the creepy UN agenda, which shares all of these themes as the premise for the conclusion that there should be a big multinational forcible agreement whereby people sacrifice their individual rights and the UN can enforce some sort of world climate law. Seems to be the basis for it. Quoting from memory, Scalfari said Pope Francis told them, "Let us remember the places that are full of biodiversity, the Amazon and Congo basin rainforests with their great aquifers," here's the Amazon, "and the great importance of these for the entire planet and for the future of humanity." He recalled that the Pope spoke of how the oceans and rivers are changing and said that the scientists are concerned about them, but politics is focused on other problems. He quotes Francis as saying that all the Christian communities have an important role to play in educating people about this. Okay, well, there's room for legitimate disagreement because I don't care about any of these issues. I care about that corpus of issues that Scalfari is referring to as political. He's making them sound crass and coarse and unchristian and unimportant. But he's an atheist. Pope Francis would rather talk to him than he would respond to Archbishop Vigano's questioning or the reporters questioning about Archbishop Vigano. We just passed the 2-year mark on the McCarrick report, and Pope Francis is still silent on that, but he can't grant enough interviews to this aging atheist who has either misquoted him to grave effect, to grave scandal, saying Jesus might not be part of the Trinity, might not have been, fully man, fully God, both, that there is no hell. The gravest things a pope could say, he's saying off record to this guy. He's either misreporting or reporting accurately, and yet he continues going for interviews there. That can't happen. Okay, speaking of McCarrick, we come to our third story. McCarrick's name, in my mind, is always synonymous with China, right? He was special envoy to China. Francis was really using him to thaw the icy relations with the CCP, Chinese Communist Party. Why should relations be good? They're one of our mortal enemies, communists. And yet, McCarrick did what he did. The relations seemed better, and yet we're still getting hacked. Vatican allegedly gets hacked by China ahead of key talks. This story broke in mainstream secular news on July 29th, lots from late last week. The Vatican and the Catholic Diocese of Hong Kong have been the targets of alleged Chinese state-backed hackers ahead of talks on renewal of a landmark 2018 deal that helped thaw diplomatic relations between the Vatican and China. The alleged attacks by a Chinese group called Red Delta began in May with an eye on September talks to renew a provisional agreement on bishop appointments. Remember, the CCP essentially gets to have the main hand in appointing Catholic bishops, Chinese Catholic bishops. Remember Cardinal Zen, a good man, a white martyr, God willing, never a red martyr, heroically leading the efforts against the state corruption in China? Well, this is what's relevant at this part of the story. According to a report Tuesday, this September meeting, the September talks, are preempted by being hacked. So the attacks were first reported by the New York Times, of all people. This is not just Catholic fake news, right? And you haven't heard a lot of follow-up on this story. And I'd like to hear follow-up on this story. And you know why? Because it ties together everything that's going on in the world right now. Coronavirus, the CCP virus, which has been out of the news utterly in terms of its ideology. We now know that the CCP ran a lab which, either accidentally or not, released coronavirus on the world. Why are none of the news agencies talking about this? Why are they not at least giving us a little reminder? McCarrick, who is still in a completely vague status, he's no longer a cardinal, but he has a new case arising against him. We've seen James Grine, his one of his best known victims. I've interviewed him with Taylor Marshall. We've seen him resurface. Now we find that McCarrick was not just molesting seminarians, as Grine has told us for 2 years. He led a pedo ring in Metuchen and in New Jersey. It ties together the maybe CCP backed, I'm speculating here, but the Soros fronted groups like Black Lives Matter and the chaos currently still unfolding for the last 2 months in American cities in the run-up to the election. And of course, all this goes together in a way that is mysterious to us, lay people. We don't know exactly what's going on. We're left to speculate a little bit. And this is a word of conclusion I would use to draw everything together tonight. We have to speculate some, right? That's what human intuition is and does. Now, it's one thing to speculate and to pitch it as gospel, and it's another thing to say, I don't know what all the facts mean here. I've never been a Catholic talking head that claims to know what all the facts are. But there is a reasonable constellation of these events that one needs to hold in the back of their mind, try to jumble them together, and listen, stay attuned to news as it develops, to these stories as they develop. Listen for certain words. We were listening for anything with Archbishop Vigano in 2018, 2019. Now we have our ears attuned to this Mandatum by Bishop Barron. Anything concerning China, Cardinal Zen, the appointment of bishops, the talks in September, coronavirus, the CCP, the U.S. election in November of this year. All of this, remember, goes together according to the design of providence. Now, much of what we're talking about is bad stuff. And so God allows it with his permissive will rather than his wise will. But we still know that it's all drawn together. The opponents of the church in the world have made themselves demasked and clear and known to each other. And now they communicate out in the open. They hide in plain sight, more so than even 5 years ago. Keep your eyes on the weather skies and keep your ears attuned for developments of these stories. Watch The World Over on EWTN. Read Edward Penton's new book about the next pope. I'd love to interview him on this. It's exciting. He was talking about it last week on World Over on EWTN with Arroyo. That's great stuff. Keep in your prayers Monsignor Charles Pope, one of my favorites in D.C. He has fallen ill with coronavirus and was spoken of very disrespectfully, I think, by Dawn Eden Goldstein. And Secular News was really being flippant in the reportage of him falling ill. Also pray for Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, who is being reported as very sick, not with coronavirus, but he's getting older and sicker, and we need to pray for him. Okay? Just keep these people close to your hearts and your beads. I will pray for all of you retrogrades out there. If space is limited in these classes, go to timothyjgordon.com. Click enroll, see my Patreon, see Dave's Patreon if you want to help me in my struggle against the BLM and against communists worldwide. Retrogrades unite. We have to organize ourselves a la Alinsky and work in the other direction. God bless you all. Stay strong. Always in the fight. Deus Vult.